houses, cars, and bank accounts, all tied up after a loved one passes.
Majority of people just have no idea until it happens to them.
We investigate the complicated legal hurdles families face.
And we cannot grieve properly if these things are not worked out.
Plus, we dig into financial and personal details made public after death.
You can be in China and you can get on the computer and you can see what all the assets are down to the penny.
Watch Dues of Dying now on InvestigateTV.com.
This is a picture of my dad and his siblings, probably one of their last family pictures. And I'm curious what they were all gathered for, since they all are dressed up clearly.
As Joe Miller gazes at old pictures of his father, Terry,
this is a really old family picture. I would have been in high school, I think, at the time.
These snapshots in time are now his most cherished memories.
And then this is a picture of my wedding, and my dad is right there.
Miller remembers his dad instilling values in him. Those values are a mere reflection of his father he now sees in himself.
But I feel like that character shaped who we are. And there are times that I find him showing up in something I do or the way I approach something.
On June 26, 2021, Terry Miller died of complications from a urinary tract infection at the age of 73. As grief set in, Miller found comfort knowing his dad, who worked as a truck driver and lived a modest middle-class lifestyle, was a planner.
I thought, and my brothers thought, we thought, okay, well, once we find the will, this can all be sorted out. I knew that he had made my brother the executor of his estate because my brother and I had talked about that. We had had a conversation about that.
But despite having a will, everything his dad owned was off limits, as it took a long time to validate that document.
It was just kind of this chaotic thing where you're trying to process your dad's death. And at the same time, you know that there are details that just need to be worked out.
4 long years later, Miller's sadness over his dad's death swiftly spiraled into madness. Grief put on the back burner as his siblings continued to navigate a complex court process called probate. More than 4 years after his dad's death, the family still can't access everything he owned. At the moment Terry took his last breath, nearly all assets and bank accounts in his father's name were frozen. For example, this house that Terry called home in Lebanon, Missouri, still tangled up in court proceedings.
Grieving is very important. It's part of who we are, it's part of being human, and we need to grieve properly. And we cannot grieve properly if these things are not worked out.
I am the owner and proprietor of my law firm. We do nothing but estate planning and administration in Louisiana.
Laura Poche is an estate planning attorney who understands Miller's frustration. She spent her decades-long career navigating this debacle over death for clients.
When somebody dies, this is the way I explain it to my clients, it's almost as if an imaginary camera takes a picture of any property titled in the name of that person's name at the moment of death. So upon my death, if real estate is titled in my name, if a bank account is titled in my name, if a brokerage account is titled in my name, Louisiana law, and most laws in the other states, has always required that a court process, a judge, oversee the distribution of those types of assets after death.
Unless you already have an estate plan, which includes a trust, our national investigative team found probate is required in all states in America upon death. In Louisiana, that same process is called a succession. That process involves hiring a lawyer and in many cases a lengthy court process. Probate is the Latin word for prove, with the first probate hearings over land and wills being held in the 1700s in Massachusetts. Over the years, probate lawyers say the process has become lengthier and more complex. Our national investigative team found families caught off guard and confused from coast to coast.
So if you own real estate, mineral interests, REITs, timeshares, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, CDs, U.S. savings bonds, checking and savings accounts, titled vehicles, aircraft, watercraft, not to mention LLCs, corporations, partnerships, sole proprietorships, all of these types of assets, These are what we call probate assets.
Poche says even if you have a will, those assets can't be released until probate is complete. That's because in recent years, scams have become prevalent, and she says banks have become skeptical of releasing funds until they have a final judgment from the courts. Without that document, a deceased person's assets are off limits.
Effectively, these internal policies have been changed to protect these banks against liability in the screwy world that we're living in today, okay?
This woman, who we will call Jane, did not want her identity revealed over issues she discovered after her beloved mother-in-law, affectionately nicknamed Skeeter, passed away.
She was a very special lady. She loved her family, and my husband in particular, that was her baby boy.
Skeeter's death last fall was no surprise. After living life to the ripe age of 100, Skeeter had taken steps to make sure her family wouldn't bear a burden upon her death. But Jane recalls her family getting caught off guard when the probate process began. Everything Skeeter owned turned into a public record for everyone to see.
You know, just as we try to keep ourselves, our things private in our life, that it should not be public record in our death.
This is a recently filed probate document. We found it available online. It's a glaring example of what Jane is talking about and how much personal information is available. We're not identifying the individual in this example to protect the family going through the process, and we've blurred sensitive information you would never share with people you don't know. But take a look at this. You can see their Chase checking account numbers and the balance in each of their checking and savings accounts at the time of their death. All of their investments, accounts with Merrill Lynch and Centura advisors, with the complete account numbers and the total amounts, even the VIN number on the Mercedes sedan this family drove and the value of the vehicle. These public probate documents also show how much debt the individual owed creditors, all things that could be useful to scammers for anyone to pull and see.
Now, you can be in China and you can, get on the computer and you can see every single probate, what all the assets are down to the penny and where they're at, the banks, where they're located. Not only that, but you're gonna know who's getting what and the exact amount that they're getting and when they're getting it. So imagine that.
Craig Parker is a trust and probate lawyer in California with over 20 years of experience. He believes the probate process needs an overhaul and would like to see Congress step in, starting with protecting the privacy of individuals who die across America. He also thinks the clunky process needs to be simplified.
Most people, like you said, I would say the majority of people just have no idea until it happens to them. The odd thing is all of us are going to pass away. And so it's not that it's an uncommon or something you can avoid. So it's going to happen to everyone.
Our national investigative team reached out to leading probate lawyers in all 50 states and scoured all state probate regulations. Our team found where you live and the assets you possess will determine the amount of time and money you can expect to spend on this process. In about half of the states, we found probate can take about 6 months to a year on the short end. The other half could take 9 months to 2 years or longer. In states like North Carolina, the average processing time for a straightforward probate could take 7 to 12 months and cost a minimum of 2% of the estate's value, but that figure can go up to 8%. Arkansas also follows a percentage system for probate costs. In Iowa, it can take 6 to 12 months and cost between 1 to 4% of the estate's value. In California, the probate process is lengthy and expensive. A middle-class estate can cost $7,000 and take several years. Other factors that contribute to the delay: how many assets are involved, how busy the courts are, and whether there are feuds between family members.
Even more so, if you have a small estate, think about how stressful it's going to be on people to try to pay the bills, deal with the grief and all of that that's going on.
Attorneys say the biggest issue for their middle-class clients is the sticker shock they face, having to shoulder the expenses until there's a final judgment. For people like Miller and Jane, death taught them a life lesson.
To me, do your family a favor and have all this stuff sorted out. Because the last thing your family needs to be doing is going through this crazy legal process instead of grieving your loss and grieving your death.
Thanks for watching this Investigate TV production. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel on YouTube or check out all of our investigations on InvestigateTV.com.